I'm now joined by Jason Marczak from Washington, D.C. by Skype. He's the director of the Latin America Economic Growth Initiative at the Atlantic Council's Latin America Center. Jason, great to have you with us. The opposition-led vote is unofficial. It is not recognized by President Maduro or his cabinet. How much real impact could this vote have in the real world?
Well, thank you very much for having me on today. Today's vote in Venezuela is largely, it's a symbolic vote. It's a symbolic vote after over 100 days of protests, nearly 100 dead, 1,500 killed. This is just since April 1st. And then President Maduro has said that the way to end all this is through a constituent assembly to rewrite the Constitution. Now, the call for a constituent assembly is not being done according to Venezuela's own constitution, which says that the people must first vote on whether to have a constituent assembly. And so this vote by the opposition is really a symbolic show of displeasure, dissatisfaction, and outright rejection of the overall process in which Venezuela will take part in 2 weeks when voters go to the polls on July 30th for this constituent assembly.
So tell us a bit more about this official referendum 2 weeks from now. What impact could that vote have?
Well, the referendum in 2 weeks from now is going to have a major impact. Now, remember that about a year and a half ago, the Venezuelan opposition won a supermajority of seats in the National Assembly. Since then, the government has taken away bit by bit the different powers of the legislative branch. And once this constituent assembly comes into power, it will have complete authority over the country, right? And so it'll make the National Assembly mute. It will have the power to delay presidential elections that are scheduled to occur. Any other powers that should be any last vestiges of a democratic checks and balances that still might exist in Venezuela could be completely wiped out once this National Assembly takes charge. Because remember that this National Assembly is also being stacked with government delegates to the assembly, and the opposition, as part of the process, has decided that it will not participate in that election.
Well, let's say if what you said becomes reality, if Maduro gets the changes he wants, what would that mean for Venezuela?
Well, what it would mean, it would be a consolidation of the powers that Maduro has systematically taken away from the Venezuelan people over the last few years. Now, mind you, the Constitution that they're looking to rewrite is the Constitution that Hugo Chavez himself rewrote when he came into office. And so there are a lot of Chavista supporters who are outright upset, don't see why the Constitution of their mentor, of their idols, Hugo Chavez, is being rewritten because this is the Constitution that he first put into power when he came into office. And so, this Constituent Assembly could really solidify Venezuela as as the world's only totalitarian narco state.
So, Jason, if Maduro's power is solidified, what would that mean in terms of foreign policy, Venezuela's relationships with Latin America and the U.S.?
Well, Venezuela's relationship with Latin America most countries in Latin America has really taken a turn in the last couple of years. Now, during Hugo Chavez's time, there was a lot of support for Venezuela, for the Bolivarian revolution that Hugo Chavez was starting. He had a number of different allies across the region. You look back just a couple of weeks ago when the Organization of American States convened in Mexico, and all of the major governments of the hemisphere voted in support of a resolution decrying the violence that has been occurring in the country and urging a restoration to democratic order. Now, that resolution did not pass because only 20 governments supported it, but all the major governments, it fell 3 short of the 23 that were needed. But you see a sea change. Mexico has played a leadership role in the hemisphere, joined by Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Chile, Peru, Canada, and of course the United States and others, and having a real concern for the fact that the situation in Venezuela could take a further nosedive. Remember that this country's in the midst of a humanitarian crisis right now, an economic crisis, and the effects could really spill over across the border. They already are spilling across the border into Colombia and Brazil, but they could have a much broader hemispheric effect.
We'll watch closely the situation inside Venezuela and, of course, the referendum. Thank you very much, Jason.